substitute for God. Evolution, this is the equivalent of saying that change in the genetic composition of life, or life form, over generations as a result of natural selection. This explains behavior. You know, naturally, yeah, I am made a man, somebody is made a woman or female, male. We have plants of different types and animals. Now, when we come to the issue of evolution, some people are saying that human beings have evolved from apes, and apes must have evolved from something else. So there is kind of evolution which changes the original genetic composition. For example, the original genetic composition of an ape with higher capacities of human beings greater than those of apes and chimpanzees. So here we find that there is something that would explain the way how we behave differently through this genetic evolution. And this is against what we may call against natural selection. And this general natural selection is the equivalent of survival for the fittest. As we have been naturally put in our different perspectives and capacities, we survive according to the way how we have been made, with such a capacities that determine what can make us live where we are. For example, if we go in the forest where animals live, we may not be fitting to live in the forest because naturally we have not been made for the forest. But when it comes to the issue of evolution, one thinks that through evolution man has found a means of how he can survive in the forest through means like equipping yourself how to live there, other than the natural selection of animals that should live in the forests. We talk about psychology. This is the understanding of the nature of human psyche in order to explain moral and social behavior. In the chapter where we are dealing with the Old Testament, we looked at the human brain and we saw how it functions. We talked about human mind, we talked about consciousness and others. So the psychology brings out the understanding of nature of the human psyche, how it works, and it can explain the kind of moral and social behavior of a human being. Psyche here means soul or id, that gives desire, your personal id that determines what you desire. It evolves into what we call ego, rational or rational thinking. Then we have what we call superego, which is moral. And you explain human conduct by examining the id that brings about the sexual impulse. When that id is dull, you find that, for example, in lower animals, the id is less emphasized like human beings, because for us we think, we plan. You see, Karl Marx also comes in with economics. Says morality was used by the dominant class to keep lower class in their place. You know, the economics of a society or people determines where you can play your cards. If you are higher, you play with the higher. If you are middle, with the middle. If you are lower, you are lower. So he talks about the morality of economics is used by the dominant class to keep others away from where they are not supposed to be. And he says that religion has been used as the opium of society. You know, opium, this is bangi, or they call them weed, they call them whatever, but you know bangi, opium. People who take opium, it lulls their minds. Their minds seem to be going to sleep, that it cannot think about positive living, or it can subject you to some powers without you defending yourself, because you are like an intoxicated person. So religion has been used as an opium to keep people subjective, you know. It brings the idea of state of nature. The idea of the state of nature represents the effort by modern philosophers to find society that is moral but not accountable to the standard of God. You live without expecting somebody to ask you why you live the way you are. So when we talk about the state of nature, it represents the efforts by modern philosophers to find a way how we can do things, whether they are moral or immoral, but we are not subjected to answer to any other person. And this brings Thomas Hobbes. He says, men decide to be moral because of self-preservation. When you want to preserve yourself, you behave in order to be acceptable. That is how Thomas Hobbes says. Then there is John Locke. He says, men submit to rulers because they want to protect their health and wealth. In other words, you subject yourself to the powers of the ruler so that you can get a service, you can get protection, you can get health, and you can work without interference and get wealthy. That is according to John Locke. Then there is this Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He says, man is naturally moral by instinct or sentiments, e.g. the issue of pity and compassion. To you people who are doing law and doing medicine, you can probe into these statements made by these people, whether they make sense of what they are saying. Because remember, we are looking at living without God, meaning that all other things can make sense in human life by their own efforts. That's what these people are trying to say. Morals without God, duty and usefulness. Having rejected God-based morals, thinkers sought to establish reason-based morals. You have to reason in order to live good or bad, or to determine wrong and right outside God. And here we have a person called Immanuel Kant, who deals with what we call deontological ethics, where deo means duty, and he says, or to him, he says, each should do that duty which is due to them, and there would be moral order. If, for example, as we have studied, let me take doctors and you lawyers. Let me begin with doctors. For example, if you are in a health center setting, you are given particular work to be done. You come in the morning, you are supposed to attend to patients who have been admitted, look at the medication given, whether they have responded to it or not. You go towards where people have been operated and see whether there is an improvement of healing, and then you prescribe medication. Or you are supposed to go in a theater and operate a patient. So if you fail to do that duty, then you have failed morally. You have failed morally because you have not done the duty which is accorded to you. Similarly to lawyers, if you are supposed to go in a court of law and represent somebody and you don't go there, then that is morally wrong because you have failed your duty. So to him he says, each should do that duty which is due to him. In our families, in our places of work, in the society, we have a duty to play. If we do that, then we are morally right. So he says, act that your principle of action might safely be made a law for the whole world. When you do right, it becomes a standard for others. You become an example. That's why we talk about models, because they have principles that can attract the community, which can be emulated, which can guide other members of the community. So morals without God, Chelme continues to say, the utilitarian ethics, where we look at utility as utilis, use, something that you use, or something in use. Humans are governed by two things, pain and pleasure. Those are the means by which humans can respond to governance. When they have pain, you can govern them. When they have pleasure, because these are drives that can give human beings to be governed, because the governor is supposed to give pleasure so that you can avoid pain. So these two things are most important. Human beings are motivated solely by the desire to gain pleasure and avoid pain, just as I had said. Therefore, what promotes happiness or pleasure is morally useful, utility. If it is like my computer I'm using, it gives me pleasure to teach you, so it is a utility. But that which brings about pain is morally useless. It is non-utilizable. Like you see, much as we use computers, there are people who have made what we call virus that interferes with our accessibility to certain programs, or who have invented certain softwares to hack some people's messages and so on. That is not a utility, because when it is put to use, it causes disharmony and pain. It should not be utilized. If we look at somebody who invented the nucleus weapons or atomic bombs, like those which were used to hit Hiroshima, to the extent that up to today, so many years have passed, people are still suffering the aftermath of the war. That is not something that we can say it is morally right, because it has caused pain on the people. So the greatest happiness of the greatest numbers is the foundation of morals and legislation. For example, if in an invention, if you put there a law, for example, which serves all humanity and brings happiness, it has been utilized for the great number of the people in the society. that is one that they can call morally approved, morally perfect, because people are happy. But if you bring something that causes the great number to suffer pain, then that is immoral, like that one I mentioned about the Hiroshima bombs. If you look at what has caused pain, for example, among the people of Kitezi, people are complaining, people have died. If somebody is behind the actions, the failure to deal with the issue of these piles of Kasasiro, then that is causing pain and it is immoral. People would say that the KCC and other responsible people have known this and they kept quiet. So their silence is an immoral action. We must have a Christian response. According to Christians, accommodating reason into moral reasoning is very good, because they say it may lead to a theological liberalism, e.g. Accommodating reason into moral reasoning might be dangerous. It may lead into theological liberalism, where people can embrace sexual revolution, explaining away deferring sexual desires like homosexuality, bestiality, which I hear has been legalized by some nations, and many others that you may see existing in your environment. So, they say returning to non-compromising biblical authority. Thinkers like Kierkegaard argued that a follower of Jesus should reject philosophical rationalization and conventional religion. And Calvert argued that Jesus Christ can only be known through revelation and the Bible, not through reason. We cannot reason in order to get salvation. We cannot reason in order to do good before God. It is through the revelation of Jesus Christ and the Bible what it requires for one to perfect his morals before God. So in conclusion, we say, can humans build a state and moral society without God? Can they? Can human reason give an adequate understanding of God and evil? I mean, good and evil? You need to remember the first temptation. The first temptation. So we should differentiate between human reason and God's reason, and that will help us how we can live a morally acceptable life here on earth.